I'm Laurie Zizian, and welcome to the podcast. Today's episode is especially tailored for baby boomers who are thinking about downsizing, retirement, or their next move. I'm joined by Kelly Sauriol with Mission 35 Mortgages, a mortgage broker I trust. Let's get started. Kelly, can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to work with homeowners and retirees?
Sure, Laurie. I have spent over 20 years in the financial services world, and over that time, I've worked with people at every stage of life. What really pulled me towards working with homeowners and retirees was actually seeing how often they felt overlooked or even misunderstood. Misunderstood by the traditional mortgage process. Many of the people I work with have done everything right. They've built equity, they've raised families, they plan for retirement, but when their needs change, they're often told that they don't fit neatly into the box anymore. My role is to slow things down, translate the options, and help them make decisions that actually support their lifestyle, their cash flow, and most importantly, peace of mind. I really enjoy this stage of life because the conversations are deeper. It's less about rates and more about quality of life, security, and making sure the choices they make today still feel good years from now. Mortgages at this stage of life are about peace of mind, not just about rates.
That's important because a lot of our listeners truly want somebody that understands this stage of life, not just numbers. So Kelly, why do you think baby boomers face different mortgage challenges than younger buyers?
I would say baby boomers are usually dealing with very different circumstances with fixed income. They're on pension, maybe investment income, or they're even helping family out. The traditional mortgage system wasn't really designed with retirement in mind. So my role is to translate the options and make sure the solution actually fits their lifestyle. For example, I often work with people who have plenty of equity, but they're limited with cash flow. So on paper they look strong, but the structure needs to change to work in real life. Retirement requires solutions that fit real life, not one size fits all.
And that's something I see consistently on the real estate side when people are selling a long-time family home. So Kelly, why do you think baby boomers face different mortgage challenges than younger buyers?
I would say baby boomers are usually dealing with very different circumstances with fixed income. They're on pension, maybe investment income, or they're even helping family out. The traditional mortgage system wasn't really designed with retirement in mind. So my role is to translate the options and make sure the solution actually fits their lifestyle. For example, I often work with people who have plenty of equity, but they're limited with cash flow. So on paper they look strong, but the structure needs to change to work in real life. Retirement requires solutions that fit real life, not one size fits all.
And that's something I see consistently on the real estate side when people are selling a long-time family home. So Kelly, what's one concern you hear over and over again from baby boomers when they first sit down with you?
I would say the biggest concern I hear, Laurie, over and over is, I don't want to make a mistake. People worry about taking on debt later in life, rightfully so. Choosing the wrong option or making a decision they can't undo. I often hear things like, I've worked too hard to get here, I don't want to mess this up now. The way I help them through that is by slowing everything down. We walk through the numbers, their options, pros and cons. We go through it together so nothing feels rushed or unclear. Once they understand what's possible and that there isn't just one right answer, that fear starts to ease. What they really want is confidence that the decision fits their life, and that's where clarity makes all the difference. Fear of making a mistake is normal, and you're not alone.
If you're listening and thinking, that's me, you're definitely not alone. So Kelly, how do you approach conversations with clients who feel anxious or overwhelmed about money and mortgages?
Laurie, I just slow everything down. When someone feels anxious or overwhelmed, the worst thing that you can do is rush them. I explain things in plain language, one step at a time, and I remind them there's no pressure to decide on the spot. I often tell clients this is just a conversation, not a commitment. Once they realize they're allowed to ask questions, take their time, you can really see the tension ease. My goal is for them to leave calmer, informed, and confident. Whether they move forward right away or they don't, that's okay. Clarity comes when you slow the conversation down.
That reassurance alone can make such a difference for people. Kelly, what makes your approach different from going directly to the bank?
Well, Laurie, a bank can only offer their own products and they have their own guidelines. So as a broker, I'm able to look at multiple lenders, different structures, and focus on what actually fits the client, not what fits one institution. That flexibility is especially important for baby boomers because no two situations look the same. Income sources, timelines, goals all vary. I also take the time to look at the bigger picture, not just the mortgage itself. So clients really feel like the advice is tailored to them, not a one-size-fits-all solution. Flexibility matters more than being familiar later in life.
And that ability to look at the whole picture is something clients really value. Like, how do you help clients decide whether keeping a mortgage, reducing it, or eliminating it altogether makes sense for them?
I like to remind them, all my clients, that there isn't one right answer. For some people, being mortgage-free brings peace of mind, and that's incredibly important. For others, keeping a manageable mortgage allows them to preserve cash, stay flexible, or use their equity more strategically. So we look at cash flow, we look at lifestyle, future plans together, and then we choose the option that feels comfortable long-term. At the end of the day, it is about what helps them sleep at night and supports their overall plan, not what looks best on paper. There's no right answer, only what supports your peace of mind.
That's such a good reminder that there isn't one right answer. Kelly, can you share an example of a situation where a client thought they had no options, but actually did?
Absolutely. I've seen this, unfortunately, more times than I can count. One example, I would say I had a retired client. They had been to the bank and told they didn't qualify because their income didn't fit the bank's traditional criteria. When we looked closer, they actually had consistent investment income that the bank hadn't even considered.
Perfect.
So once that was properly structured and documented, they suddenly had very workable options. I had another client, another situation. The client assumed they were out of options because their income was very limited, only on CPP and OAS, but they had significant equity in their home. So by focusing on that equity, instead of just the monthly income, we were able to create a solution that worked and relieved a lot of stress. So both situations, what they've had in common is that the clients weren't out of options. They just hadn't been shown the right ones yet.
Most people have options, they just don't know it yet. Kelly, what should someone look for when choosing a mortgage broker, especially later in life?
Laurie, I always tell people, look for someone who really, really listens. Someone who explains things clearly and doesn't rush the conversation. Later in life, decisions are often more layered, so patience and transparency matter just as much as experience.
Mm-hmm.
You want a broker who's willing to walk through different scenarios, answer questions honestly, and tell you when something doesn't make sense, not just when something does. Feeling comfortable and understood is just as important as the technical expertise. Who you work with matters, just as important, just as much as the numbers.
But that advice alone can save people a lot of stress. Kelly, what are the biggest mortgage myths you hear from baby boomers when they're thinking about downsizing or moving?
There are a few. Some big myths I hear all the time. One, I would say that once you're retired, you won't qualify for a mortgage. That's a big one.
Huge.
That simply isn't true. Lenders can look at pension income, government benefits, investments, and other sources, not just employment income. Another common myth is that taking any mortgage later in life is automatically a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, that's very true, but for others, a small or well-structured mortgage can actually improve cash flow and flexibility. Third one, I'd say many people assume downsizing will automatically make things easier financially. Keep in mind, once you factor in today's prices, closing costs, lifestyle expenses, that's not always the case. That's why running the numbers and understanding the options upfront is so very important.
Mm-hmm.
Being retired doesn't mean you're out of options.
I hear that all the time. People talk themselves out of a move before they even have the conversation. Kelly, many baby boomers assume they need to be mortgage-free at retirement. Does that always make sense financially?
Not always. For some people, being mortgage-free brings real peace of mind, and that's incredibly important. For others, keeping a manageable mortgage can actually make more sense financially. Paying off a home completely can sometimes leave people cash poor, especially if it means draining savings or investments. In those cases, keeping a small, comfortable mortgage can actually preserve flexibility and cash flow. The key is looking at the full picture and choosing what supports your lifestyle and your long-term comfort. Financial comfort looks different for everybody.
That's such a great point. How can a mortgage actually be used as a tool in retirement instead of something to avoid?
Well, Laurie, I'd like to reframe it in this way. In retirement, a mortgage doesn't have to be something that you're fighting against. It can be something that works for you. When it's used properly, it becomes a planning tool. I've seen mortgages used to free up cash flow, access equity without forcing a sale, or help someone move into a home that better fits how they actually live today without draining all that savings or investments. The goal isn't to carry debt for the sake of it, but to use it intentionally to support lifestyle, flexibility, and again, peace of mind. A mortgage can create flexibility, not stress.
I love that perspective. It reframes the conversation in a really healthy way. Kelly, what mortgage options are most popular right now for baby boomers, especially those who are selling a long-time family home?
Right now we're seeing a lot of interest in smaller, more manageable mortgages that are more designed around predictability rather than borrowing power. For many baby boomers selling a long-time family home, that means things like shorter mortgage terms, fixed payments, or even setting up a home equity line of credit as a backup, rather than something they actively use. I would say the common theme is comfort and flexibility. People want to know what their payments are going to be, and they want to protect their cash flow. So keeping their options open as their plans evolve, it's much less about stretching and more about choosing something that feels sustainable long-term.
Predictability and comfort matter more than borrowing the maximum.
For sure.
Kelly, if someone is living on a pension income, CPP, or investment income, how does that affect mortgage qualification?
Well, it definitely doesn't disqualify you at all. Lenders can consider pension income, CPP, OAS, work pensions, certain types of investment income. What really matters is how that income is structured, how consistent it is, and how it's documented. Mm-hmm. So once it's presented properly, many retirees are actually in a stronger position than they expect. It's less about where the income comes from and more about how we're showing that to the lenders and that it's reliable and sustainable. And if the income doesn't support, then we can look at the equity in the home to help. Retirement income still counts, it just needs to be understood.
That's such an important clarification. Retirement income does not mean no options. What should baby boomers think about before they sell, mortgage-wise, to make their next move smoother?
I would say the biggest thing is to have the conversation early before the home ever goes on the market. Understanding what you qualify for, how much equity you'll actually walk away with after selling costs, and what your mortgage options look like. Looking at the next step can remove a lot of stress.
Sure.
When people do this up front, they're able to make decisions calmly instead of reacting under pressure. It makes the entire move a lot smoother from listing to buying or downsizing, because there aren't going to be any surprises along the way.
And that planning piece can make the entire move feel so far less overwhelming. Kelly, are there smart strategies for baby boomers who want to help their children or grandchildren buy a home without hurting their own financial security?
Yeah, there are some smart ways to help. I would say that it has to be done very carefully, usually involve a lawyer. I've seen parents help though by just gifting part of a down payment with money they know they're not going to need. Maybe it's an early inheritance, or sometimes they structure a loan with clear expectations, making sure everybody's on the same page. In other cases, I've seen using a portion of home equity can make sense, but only when it doesn't affect their own cash flow or comfort. The common theme is making sure that the help supports the next generation without compromising the parents' long-term security. Mm-hmm. Always consult a financial advisor and accountant for these types of things. Supporting families should never compromise your own security.
Great point. That is such a delicate balance, and having guidance really matters. How do interest rates impact retirees differently than younger buyers, and what should they be watching for?
Interest rates themselves, Laurie, they aren't necessarily different for retirees, but the impact of the rate changes is. So retirees are often living on fixed income, so payment stability becomes far more important than chasing the absolute lowest rate. What they should be watching for is predictability and how a rate is going to affect monthly cash flow, renewal risk, and long-term comfort. So for many retirees, a slightly higher rate with stable payments can feel much safer than a lower rate that introduces uncertainty and or stress.
Right.
Stability matters more than chasing the lowest rate.
That stability is huge when you're living on a fixed income. Kelly, what role does a reverse mortgage play today, and who's actually the best suited for it?
Well, Laurie, reverse mortgage can play a very real and important role today when they're used intentionally and properly. They're not for everyone, and they shouldn't be used blindly, but they also aren't just a last resort option. I have helped many clients who were house rich, but struggling with cash flow. They were behind on bills, stressed about property taxes, worried about staying in their home, couldn't qualify for traditional mortgage. In that situation, the reverse mortgage allowed them to eliminate all of their monthly payments and regain that financial stability and peace of mind. I recently worked with a client who actually is planning to sell in the near future, but they need breathing room in the meantime. So in those cases, a reverse mortgage can actually act as a short-term bridge, easing the cash flow without forcing a rushed sale. So when clients fully understand how it works and it fits their broader plan, a reverse mortgage can actually increase flexibility and reduce stress, which is exactly what many people are looking for at this stage of life.
Perfect.
Just because it is an option that exists doesn't mean it's the right one for everybody.
I'm glad you said that. I've seen situations in my own experience where things didn't unfold the way the people expected it. And it really reinforced for me how important it is to understand all the risks and alternatives before going down that path. Kelly, what's one piece of mortgage advice you wish every baby boomer knew before making a move?
Laurie, I would say don't assume you already know the answer before asking the question. I see so many baby boomers quietly carry worry or delay decisions because they've convinced themselves that their options are limited. In reality, it often takes just one conversation to replace that uncertainty with clarity. Even if someone isn't ready to make a move, understanding what's possible ahead of time gives them confidence, control, and peace of mind, and that can make all the difference. Clarity and confidence start with one conversation.
That is such a powerful takeaway. Information really is empowerment. Piece of advice you give almost every baby boomer client, regardless of their situation.
I would say don't assume anything. I always encourage people to have the conversation early, even if they're just thinking about a move or a change. Too often people wait because they assume they won't qualify or that their options are limited. When you understand your options ahead of time, you're no longer reacting under pressure. You're making decisions from a place of control, and that's incredibly empowering. Knowing your options early gives you control.
That's such a great takeaway and a perfect note to end on. Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your insight today. I think what really stands out from this conversation is that there are options and that no one needs to make big decisions in isolation or based on assumptions. If you're listening and you're a baby boomer, my biggest takeaway is this: having the right conversations early can make all the difference. You just need good information and people you trust in your corner. Consider sharing it with someone who might need it. Until next time.